ladies, we have not a lot of time. I know Ebony has to run for this flight that she's very stressed about. So I'm going to ask everyone's stress levels after a day and a half amongst our own, drinking our wonderful Kool-Aid. Raise your hands if you feel a little less stressed today than you did on Wednesday.
Not really.
All right. Okay, so this is good for us. So Reykjavik Global Forum, keep calling us back because this works really well for our cortisol levels and for getting our brains to really calm down and actually evaluate where we are and where we need to go, because strategies need to change. But strategies can only change if we kind of recognize where we come from and our experiences and how they defined us and the steps we took so far, because some of those steps might have been missteps going by the way the world is going. So Yen, I'm going to start off with you, because after 606 days in solitary confinement, coming out and having to go into exile, women in power, a frank assessment of how far we have to go is a rather big question to ask you. So lay the ground out for us. Give us the background of what landed you in solitary confinement, landed you with getting tortured, and away from, at that point, a 4.5-year-old child.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. It's a real privilege to be here with you all, and just to be able to hear kind of all the stories that of empowerment, really, from around the world. So I'm from a small country called Nicaragua in Central America. I've been a human rights activist, I'm a feminist, and I've been involved in politics in the last almost 20 decades. And I want to start by saying that it's important for me to share why I got involved in politics. You know, I got involved in a very pivotal moment in the life of my country. We were fearing that there was a dictator that was going to be elected. And then second, something had happened that was also very important. A law that had existed for 169 years that allowed women to interrupt pregnancy if her health was at risk, or if you had been raped, you know, had been banned. So I was really convened by women too. Groups of women, I'm part of the broader women's movement in the country, who thought that it was really important for to have belligerent social movements, really pushing forward agendas, making governments accountable, but that we needed also to have more women in politics. So I decided to join a progressive political party. We really organized the women within the party. We were able to get elected the youngest president of a political party in Central America, and I eventually became also the president of that party in 2018. Just fast forwarding, the dictatorship did consolidate in the country, a dictatorship that has committed crimes against humanity, that decided in 2018 uprisings to kill peaceful protesters. 355 mothers are still claiming for justice. And I was a part of the opposition movement. So in 2021, 6 months before the electoral process, instead of competing in free and fair elections, which was the demand, the dictator decided to kidnap me from my home, and in front of my 4.5-year-old son, and I was in a state of disappearance for about 81 days, and in conditions of torture. There were 4 of us, women, political leaders, that were kept in solitary confinement. And it was for a reason. It was to communicate that the political space was not a space where we should be. That was, the intention of that torture. And I was released last year. But the conditions for the release was basically banishing 222 political prisoners of us to the US. So I'm living in exile in the US. As we were flying, our nationality was stripped. I guess, some of I share this story because it's a story that's not only mine, it's a story of 5,000 also Nicaraguans who have that experience, but an experience of violence in politics, that started as online violence and harassment too, and that ended up being the violence that I've experienced. But it's an experience that's happening all around the world in situations of authoritarian regimes.
It's kind of like the UN report, if you look at it, for Nicaragua is in stark contrast to some of the stellar gender numbers that they seem to put out, and also Guatemala and so on and so forth. The list goes on. So I'm going to switch over to you, Agne, because at some point Lithuania is sitting a little bit pretty in comparison. There's no such report out from the UN about your human rights conditions. But give us a story of how you landed up as 4 years as a government minister, the learnings, and what brought you to that space. What happened to drive you into interior, policing, all of that you take on board?
First of all, my political career started when I was 25 years old, and I was the youngest ever elected politician woman. And for the past 16 years, I have been member of parliament, and for the past 4 years, a minister of interior. And of course, my professional path was challenging and not easy. I was judged many times by my looks, by my age, by my gender. But yet, as a minister of interior, after this long term, I can proudly announce that as a woman leader in this ministry, I successfully managed multiple crises. I successfully strengthened security of my country. And my message today to all women here is, we should not let stereotypes hold us back. Let's use them as motivation. And my motivation was that I have a real clear goal to make progress, to make my country stronger, and it helps me. And also, important is that my motto is never give up. And I really believe that we all together can break these glass ceilings. But of course, we need this aim, this goal, and only that can help us. And once you do it, I can 100% agree that we can open the door for other women who follow us.
You're in a tricky spot because considering all that's happening near your border, it is a time like no other to have women in strong positions in terms of security in Lithuania. So explain to me how that's received, because when we look at your countries, Estonia, all of you just look like really strong women. Is the story that you've put out there the real story, or is there an undercurrent that we're seeing in the rest of the world, this pushback by boys and men?
It is a really difficult situation and really difficult challenges for me personally as a minister, because the main things and the main responsibility for me as a minister was to make my country stronger and to protect our borders. And of course, I need to find some compromise. And it was not easy to find this, not compromise, but this middle way in this situation. And of course, I have a lot of pressure in our society. I have a lot of discussion in media, and of course some conversation within our international partners. But I think that I protect my country, and also I open the doors for new leaders, because it is such a difficult situation to be a leader in law enforcement system. Yeah, I am very happy that about 40% in our law enforcement are women. But in the leading position, we have only 4%, but no one in the highest position. I'm also the second minister in Lithuania as an interior. And how we can change the situation. First of all, I think we need lead by our example. Lead to be strong leaders and to encourage, to empower our women. Of course, second thing, it is education process. Not only for young girls and women, but also for boys and men. Second thing, it is important to change environment of working place to empower our women and to make situation when it is easy to have family and your successful career in the same time, because it is also very, very difficult.
You have to learn how to balance it out, and you have to learn to listen. And I think that brings me to you, Ebony. I think we've all been analyzing the results of the election ad nauseum and listening, and the storylines have been questioned. Were we listening enough? Were we telling the right kind of stories about women in power? When you look at trying to talk about the solutions that Agne is talking about, reach out, kind of set an example. What are some of the solutions we all can walk away with? We're coming to the end of this forum, almost the close, but we still have to go to the spa. At some point, we have to kind of figure out what are some of the lessons that we can walk away with?
Yeah, I think we've had so many golden nuggets that we can take away from here. Come with me on a journey really quickly around acceleration. I am getting older, right? And cardiovascular workout used to be my thing. And it was the only place that I would go to feel really good. And so as I've aged, I understand that strength is a key component to me feeling my absolute best. And so I'm in the gym and knowing that I have to lift weights. And so accelerating from cardiovascular to weightlifting has been a journey for me. And as part of that journey, I would get to 20 pounds and fight. And I couldn't go past 20. And I'm like, what is the problem here? Okay, I got to 25. But once I released that fight in me and began to understand the value of pressing instead of fighting, it opened my body up to so much more. Because as I was fighting, the fighting was resisting me. And so what I learned was, in order for me to get from 25 pounds to 100 pounds, I had to press my way through. It is the same exact analogy that we use so well when we talk about elevating and accelerating women of power. Instead of fighting to get a fight back, how about pressing? So strategy becomes a precise part and piece to the value of our ecosystem. It's so much sweeter, it's so much nicer, and it gives so much better and greater results. And this is why I say the culminating piece to all of this is pressing our way through when it comes to our youth and involving and engaging them and listening to their value and platforming what they have to say, with understanding that our wisdom and their youth can be a great synergy to a change and a shift of power in the world. In addition to that, how are we supporting and thinking about people and women looking at ecosystems of change, or men even that are fighting for our power? How are we supporting them differently? By pressing instead of fighting.
Give me an example of that.
Absolutely.
How do we support differently? Because something's got to get.
Strategy is key. If I use the examples that I just used, when I was trying to fight my way through another 5 pounds, another 10 pounds, I wasn't getting anywhere. But when I learned to use every piece of my body as a strategic piece to move from 10 pounds to 15 to 25, to 100, I found that everything around me began to change. And that strategy piece sits in measurement. I was just at a conversation at dinner the other day, and Lydia, I hope she's here. If she's not here, she was an extremely great director in our conversation. She said it took us 3 years in our tech ecosystem to move women to equal pay from 5% down to 0.2. And she talked about all of these processes that came with that. And the first thing I asked her was, do you have a playbook? Where is the playbook to acceleration? We oftentimes sit and listen and hear women and think about, wow, that's a great move. But do we ever ask for the strategy, for the measurement, for the playbook? I'm going to find Lydia when I get out of here. And I'm going to say, write that playbook so that I can bring it to Queens. And then I share it with London, England. I share it with folks in Lithuania. Share it with folks in Ukraine and everywhere else. Our strategy has to be embedded in a measurement tool. And those measurement tools are the strategic part of pressing. When we fight, all we do is scream, holler, yell, and it goes right over the heads of our worst enemy. But when we learn how to strategically align ourselves in ways that are conductive and produce real end results, we see the world change.
Measurement tool. Suyan, thank you. That was amazing.
Yeah,
the way you think about this.
Yeah. So I told you about this, difficult story. But what I guess I didn't tell you is that after I was released, I had this opportunity to lead now a new fund. I'm leading a new fund called the Colmena Fund, which is the mission is really to accelerate the power of women in politics across the global South, and trying to really also focus on getting more women from marginalized communities to be able to secure those seats right at the table and to be able to thrive. And we're being very intentional on the issue of power, because of course we want to increase the number of women entering this pipeline, but the huge challenge is really equipping and having the power to be able to really deliver on the outcomes that we want. And through this process, we really have monitored, and we've seen it here, that we have these common barriers around the world, independently of the continent and the country, different realities, of course, but that there are strategies that are working and that are important that we scale them. Definitely the networks of solidarity, and these networks of also that bring together kind of different spheres, women political leaders, those who are nurturing democratic and human rights values, political leadership, those in the movements and the feminist movement. There's a big divide, and there's a need to really collaborate it and come together. There's a huge need for funding, and that's one of the hardest challenges that women are facing, coupled with the violence. The online violence has come up as a theme that is common. And so part of what we want to do in the fund is catalyze funding. We really raise the awareness and build evidence of why it is important that we have more women at the table, but also more diverse women everywhere around the world. And also try to really also support financially organizations that are nurturing that and an enabling environment. And that means, I think a lot of the work, some of the things that you've said here is also making visible these women, what they're doing in politics, the stories, the transformation that is happening at the local level, not only in the parliamentarian level, but at the local level is very important. Changing the perception of what it is to lead and what that means. Changing also the perception of what it means to be in politics, because if we want to attract also more young people, we need also to fund them. We need those to give them those platforms, but we also need to really rethink the narratives around how we're framing involvement in politics, because it's
rebuild the trust in politicians through actual playbook and strategy. Tell the stories of expertise rather than just the sake of a woman, and also learning from you at some point of saying, hang on, there's an example up here, but I'm actually doing a real job in a very tough space.
But also I would like to mention in Lithuanian side, it's important to say that we have this problem, elephant in the room, and gender stereotypes still exist in the 21st century. And we need to speak loudly about these problems, and in social media with all groups, and also solidarity of women.
Speak loudly. We need that playbook,
Yeah.
so please share that. And we need it to reflect every single culture, every situation. We're out of time.
Yeah.
Does everyone in this room feel a little bit better about having a playbook that's coming our way through Ebony and some data
yes.
coming from this? Amazing woman here.
holistic
Fantastic.
protection for women.
We have now got our time out, but it's a pretty frank assessment. A long way to go, ladies. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so thank you so much for this conversation. We'll head out and get you to your plane, Ebony.
Let's go.